Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Self Choose the Shit. I'm your host, Joshua Self. There's a lot to talk about. This past week has been pretty crazy. Like, a lot's happened. We got some brand new information on Facebook that happened maybe 2 hours ago as of you recording this. Today being March 27th, 2019, 1:03 p.m. Before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that happened over the past couple of days. One of the saddest things I've seen in quite a long time, the story about Alex Haynes from Toledo, Ohio, who used to be a pastor, and he told this woman that he would take care of her daughter, and naturally it goes from he takes care of his daughter to now he's taking advantage of this woman, and this girl, like, he's having sex with this girl, this underage girl. And then to take it a step further, not only is he having sex with this girl, he encourages two other pastors to also have sex with this girl. Ohio, what the fuck are y'all doing? But the problem, the story gets even worse. As if that was possible. Like, it's bad enough that you have three grown men having sex with this underage girl, being taken from apartment to hotel, and being abused by these three men. After this girl found a way to contact some authorities and to tell her story, what was happening to her, Anthony Haynes' wife and his stepdaughter apparently kidnapped this girl at gunpoint, choked her, threatening her, like, we're gonna kill you if you tell. And I don't even want to believe this shit's true. Like, this is the kind of stuff that is better than TV. You can't make this up. The Alex Haynes right now, he's still on trial for the child trafficking charge, but the other two pastors have already pled guilty, and they're just waiting sentencing right now. So this whole scenario is somewhere between horrific and truly fucked up. And it's bothersome that his wife would basically support him in doing this terrible thing. Like, she is more concerned about her status and her livelihood than the literal life of this young girl that effectively was in her charge. Even though the pastor said, I'll take this girl in, because, he and the wife live together, this girl is also under the care of his wife. So you take this young, innocent girl in, and you decide to abuse her, and either you're an active participant or you rather look the other way. The entire scenario is terrible, and my heart goes out to the girl and her mother. Like, I hate that her mother was in a situation where she felt like she could not take care of her daughter for whatever reason. That reason is irrelevant, but that situation is terrible. So that whole church has dissolved since this news broke. And I also hate that for the members of that church, because while it was first happening, there's a strong chance that most of them didn't know what was going on. And it's unfortunate that people in the church often don't have the type of discernment that they need in order to know who's doing what type of shit. And part of why you're in the church to begin with is because you lack that type of discernment. So for this guy to take advantage of this young girl and take advantage of the people who followed him is terrible. So I want to speak really just to the Christians for a hot minute. We are supposed to exemplify Christ in everything that we do. So when people on the outside see us, they see Christ. And that's what's supposed to happen. So when we have someone who claims to be of Christ do this terrible thing, this horrific thing, it looks bad on everybody. We have people on the outside saying, why would I want to join an organization where their leader, the person in charge of this thing, the person running things, is out here raping little girls? Like, why would I want to join the organization? And to be honest with you, I don't blame anybody for saying something like that. While I will say that obviously one person is not representative of the whole, the problem is when it happens and Christians don't move fast enough to address the issue, it looks bad on everybody. And the people on the outside are just kind of like, I don't want to be a part of that. And it's hard to blame them for that, you know? Like, we have to do better, because when people see that, if they associate us with Christ, it looks bad on Christ too. Like, that's not anything that Christ did, but it looks bad when the people who are following him are doing these really fucked up things. I mean, look at things that, you know, say someone uses profanity, someone drinks alcohol, someone's having premarital sex. All these things are kind of like not really supposed to be Christian. But the problem is raping little girls, that's not even worldly. Like, most people out in the world don't do that kind of shit. And so it's like, I'm already in the world, like, why do I want to join this organization where, like, my kids might be at risk if I send them to your church? You know, like, what type of thing is going to happen to my family if I come join y'all? Like, they're not going to want to do that. So I'm gonna move on from Mr. Anthony Hayes. I hope you get the max penalty, whatever that is in Ohio. I hope you get all of it. You deserve that shit. Someone who apparently did not get what he deserved, though, Mr. Jussie Smollett. Most of the police force in Chicago and even some of the prosecution felt like he was able to make some sort of backroom deal and circumvent the law. In case you are unaware, he's been the charges against Smollett have been dropped. In case of the letter that was sent, that part is still pending, but everything else is gone. So he's out, and I guess that's good for him. I don't know what's going to happen to his career now. Like, he's been exonerated, so it's like, I didn't do it, guys. See, I was telling the truth. But I think similar to OJ, it's like most people are kind of like, yeah, you might have beaten the law, but we all know that you did that shit. So we'll see what happens in the coming months if we are able to, like, get past what happened. Will he be able to find work? I mean, they already got rid of his character on the show, so will he be able to come back? Who knows? But in Charlottesville last week, there was some more fuck shit. Like, I don't know if you guys recall from a couple years ago, the quote Tiki Torch riot, and you know about the whole like white supremacy and all this thing. And when that happened, you know, Facebook decided to make some changes to the way it polices free speech. And unfortunately, last weekend in Charlottesville, there were threats of ethnic cleansing. And the terrible part to me is that it's 2019. In 2019, in America, like, we're not talking about some random part of Africa. We're not talking about like somewhere in the Middle East, you know, where we might think about this thing kind of happening. We're not talking about like parts of like Russia or something like that. You know, like when I think ethnic cleansing, I'm thinking like Darfur, like Yugoslavia, you know, like Sudan, like areas over there. It's like they do that shit over there. We're talking about here in America, Charlottesville. Multiple schools closed Thursday and Friday because they're afraid of a possible shooting. They arrested one kid, but even the fact that they felt threatened enough to where we need to close a school, and we need to close multiple schools because we don't know where this attack might happen. Is that not sad? You know, of the things that we can think about in 2019, it's like, oh, so our schools are going to be closed because somebody might come in and shoot us. And when we send our kids to school, we want them to be safe. And so for them to not be safe in 2019 is like, it's unacceptable. You know, I've been talking to, my bad little vibe and about one day having kids and whether or not we should homeschool or send them to private school or to public school. And Charlottesville and other incidences are really making a bad case for public schooling. It's like it's just not safe sometimes. And I'm not really the type to buy into the sky is falling or I just can't send my kids to school for fear of their life. But at the same time, you have to take these type of things into consideration when you decide, like, where do I want to allow my children to get their education? When my child, who would be Black, since I am, it is fearful for his or her life because they're in a public school and there are people who don't like them because they're Black. Like, that's terrible. And it's like, I don't even know if I want to bring a kid into that, and the crazy part is that people always feel that, well, racism is dead or it's not that bad. And yet we have these examples that are clear, that are recent. This is not something that happened like 50 years ago. This is not even something that happened last year. This is literally 5 days ago. Threat of ethnic cleansing. Come on, y'all. We got to do better. We have to do better. So in an effort to do better, Facebook has decided to step up their game, so to speak. This morning, Facebook announced that it's decided to ban white separatism and white nationalism. Originally, when the Charlottesville news first hit a couple years ago, Facebook decided to ban white supremacy after the counter-protester, Heather or something, was killed. And they kind of left white nationalism and white separatism alone because originally they felt like nationalist and separatist language was not always racist. And they've changed their mind since then. There have been several civil rights groups that have brought up, like, hey, if you actually look at this rhetoric, it's practically the same thing. Like, there's so much overlap, and Facebook now is like, well, when you look at the language, the distinction can't really be made. Like, it's basically the same thing. These are all kind of like different aspects of the same type of organized hate. But I want to point out that Facebook's original perspective on it is kind of the difference between like level 0 racism and like level 4 racism. Like level 0 is like, I hate niggers, like, let's go lynch them, that kind of thing. But level 4 is kind of like, well, level 0 is bad, but level 2, which is kind of like the separatists and the nationalism, is like, well, it's not always racist. And that was their theme. They're like, sometimes it is, but it's not always, so we don't want to ban it. Because it's kind of like, we don't want to censor free speech, which I get it. You don't want to take people's like freedom away. You don't want to be like, no, you can't say anything on our platform. But the problem is that if you're trying to make money, you can say, I only want to make money off of this particular group. Or you can say, I want to make money off of everybody. And if you want to truly make money for everybody to be inclusive, you have to make it to where people feel safe in your space. And so in order to do that, it's like, well, we need to get rid of this whole white supremacy and its other faces, which in this case, nationalism and separatists. So Facebook is like, well, people put in this type of language, they search for it, they'll be directed to a nonprofit organization called Life After Hate, which is, about trying to move past hate and, live a more productive life. This organization was founded by ex-white separatists. Notes that they're still white, they're just not supremacists or whatever anymore. I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think the first thing that people want to point out, though, is, well, what about Black separatists, or what about the Basque movement? And Facebook has made certain provisions that will not include people just because they use like the term separatist or nationalism. It's designed more to kind of get rid of certain hate groups, as opposed to just someone who loves their country or whatever, or feels like their country or aspect of their country should, succeed for the rest of it for whatever reason. And it's difficult to police, so I'm not sure how it's really going to play out in the next, 6 months or so, but I'm sure that the overall community will benefit from it. There's always like a few people that feel like the white nationalism and white separatists are not racist. There's a few of them that feel that way, but the vast majority of people are kind of like, we don't really want this. Like, they're basically just trying to change their words a little bit. They're saying things like, I'm not racist, I'm nationalist. It's kind of like, like if you don't want people of a different color in your country, that's racist. Like, how are you going to put it? That's the whole issue right there. It's just like, we don't want you guys around us, unless you get paid to play basketball or something. So it's interesting stuff, and over in Europe, you got this other crazy thing where they've basically trying to get to where content providers, things like YouTube and that sort of thing, will be forced to have upload filters to where any like image or type of rhetoric or whatever has to go through the filter, and if it's like a copyrighted image, then it gets blocked. And a lot of people feel like this is like a meme ban, because basically memes are just pictures that are all copyrighted, from movies or a TV show or whatever. And so it's like, well, the counterpoint to that is that, well, memes fall under parodies, which are allowed. But the question is whether or not an upload filter will be able to really decipher that, So we'll see in the next few months if Europe decides to change the way its internet works, whether it's for the good or for the bad. I think that trying to protect copyrights in a vacuum is a very good idea, but no one looks at a meme and says, oh, that's copyrighted. And I would rather allow the general public to use whatever pictures and whatnot that it has than be very, very restrictive over who is allowed to use whatever particular picture. And the reason I say is because the internet, even though it's been around for a while, is still not like a book or, movies or something like that have been around for several decades, like those kind of things have been around for at least like 100 years, but the internet is still kind of new. The internet's like an adolescent now. It's past its infancy, but it's still really not grown. Like we have no idea what it's really capable of, really. Like we've seen things that happened in the past 10 years that we had no idea about, in terms of connecting gaming, and we have like TV streaming, like all these things have like changed the way we look at, say, cable. Once upon a time, like if you didn't have cable, it's like, what did you have? Dish maybe? But the internet came along, and for a long time we had internet, you had cable or dish, you had DVDs, and then someone else was kind of like, well, what if we just watch things online? It's like, what? Like, what is that about? And so when we started having streaming services, it's like, well, the advent of the internet has changed the way we look at a lot of, distribution models and whatnot. We look at sites like Amazon that are able to streamline so much because of the power of the internet. And I think we're haven't even scratched the surface of what is really going to be capable with the advent of the internet. And we definitely, like, people look at the internet as available to anyone. Like, I can take a picture, I can download something, all willy-nilly, with no consequence. I think trying to stop people from doing that is futile. Like, our efforts are better served on something else. Like, let people post whatever they want to within reason. That's just how I feel. Like, I don't really want to live in a world where I can't scroll through Facebook or Twitter and see 100 different memes about the same thing. Like, who wants to live in that kind of world? I don't know who started memes, but memes are great. I feel like the person who started it probably should have copyrighted. Then it would have been a totally different thing. But they didn't. It's their fault. Sucks for them. But I appreciate your contribution to our current society. Thank you. We would not be where we are today without you, sir or ma'am, or a kid. It's probably a kid. I can't imagine like an adult starting that thing. Probably some like 5-year-old kid just kind of hee shark doo doo doo. So that's about all I got for you guys this week. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me talk random shit about stuff. I appreciate everything. My girlfriend's birthday is this coming weekend, so I'm excited about that, and I'll let you guys know how it goes. Thanks for sticking with me. You guys have a good weekend.